Blind pick for what, like 6 months at this point? New split, everything changed, doesn't matter. That champion is still disgusting, but to be fair, so is the K'Sante. It's so very strong at the moment, can do well into both the aggressive top laners and the tankier ones, and just gives you so much versatility once you get into these big team fights. Not surprised at all though that ThunderTalk are going to see that the Ashe doesn't get locked in and at least consider it for themselves. There's a reason it's been so strong. It can take over the bot lane in such an interesting way. You can pair it with aggressive supports and you can get tons of kills, or you can pair it with a little bit more of a chill bot lane, sit back, let the rest of your team pop off. 1xN has looked great on it in the past as well, so I'm very excited to see what he can do on this one.
If I'm ThunderTalk, I'm making sure I've got my glasses on, contacts in. Ashe on red side is a dream come true. Poppy going to come in as well. That is a very interesting pick, but I like it for Hoya. Obviously, face value, the champions versus champion. Poppy with that steadfast presence can be a real pain in the side of a K'Sante, but this is Hoya's bread and butter. We talk about these two soul laners. They have those pocket picks. Bloxer, you talked about the Akali for SeTab that we might see later, but this Poppy and the Gragas for Hoya are two picks that have been prevalent for him in both the Demacia Cup and the LPL split to start. With the EDG turn, Wukong and Varus, those are pretty two solid picks after the K'Sante start.
They really are, and they're something that Assum has been playing for years and years at this point. If you flick back through his match history, likes to pull this champion out more than any other pickup. Very, very comfortable on it. That's the sort of matchup that you want to give yourself early on, and it works well into the Ashe, especially if you can play that lethality variation, because you don't have to get near it. The best thing for an Ashe is you get close enough to land one auto attack, you're slowed, you can't get away, especially when paired up with something like the Braum right here. This is a bot lane that is a nightmare to try to get near. I'd be very surprised if we end up seeing a melee range support for EDG, because it would have a very tough time in this matchup. You'd have to really roam and get onto the rest of the map to try to help out your team, and I really like what ThunderTalk have got for themselves right now. They've got a really solid core to this roster. They've got a tankier top laner, a support who can really help out, and an Ashe who's both great for the utility and the damage. A very strong identity. They're just going to need a little bit of something extra right here in the jungle potentially to really get this composition going, flowing.
Bloxer, all I see is Feather not on a hook champion, and I'm sad. But we got more games.
That's true. Hey, the Braum is super fun, and we can't see it again, of course. So that is one of the joys of this. The full Fearless. I was surprised to see that they were going to go towards full Fearless rather than the sort of half version that we got previously. And I think that's another reason I'm so surprised that we see this Ashe given over. You now can't play this at any point. That Premier B1's now just gone.
That's a great point to make as we look to round out the second phase of bans here. A lot of support targeting. Gotta love a Renata pick. I like the Renata ban. I think it's a little interesting into obviously a Braum bottom lane. Maybe it's ThunderTalk signaling they're going to pick a lot more pretty obvious engage tools, I would say, later on in this draft as Jason Zyra round out the Edward Gaming picks here. And now we'll get to see where ThunderTalk want to leave their counter pick between their mid laner and their jungler. But like you called out, can't rely just on the engage of this Ashe Arrow and maybe a Poppy stun.
Yeah, you're going to need a little bit more, and in terms of more, the things that people have been going towards really has been, obviously, the Wukong that we've seen picked away, and the Vi. It's getting hovered right here. I wouldn't be surprised to see that one locked in, and indeed we are going to get to see it. And this is a composition now that has a ton of hard engage, and the follow-up to get on top of an Enchanted Crystal Arrow that hits very easily. Both the Ashe and the Braum can follow up on those incredibly well, pairs with the Poppy so well as well. I really do like what ThunderTalk have got for themselves. So over to EDG, what do they get to round out this composition? Gonna need themselves a mid laner and a support. The Taliyah should be in the mid lane, but it can go over to the support as well. Be a little bit surprised in this matchup. I don't think you necessarily want to be playing that kind of matchup, although it would be taking you further away from the Ashe Braum.
We'll see. Rakan. I like Rakan as a better answer into Braum. Obviously a little more shifty, so you can create a bit more. And Wink, as the most senior EDG member on this roster, going to look to be the major playmaker. I'm glad Taliyah's off the board for the sole fact that I think that would have been a bad pick for ThunderTalk. ThunderTalk, you got to index into a pretty damage-heavy, even potentially scaling damage-heavy mid laner, in my opinion, just for damage profile. Ahri is a very good pairing with Vi. It's a classic pairing. They're going to lock that one in for SeTab, but across the board here, Bloxer, you're relying on a scaling Ashe, an Ahri, and a Vi to really compose most of your damage, that is not reliable into the phase of the game where we think ThunderTalk is most prevalent.
It really isn't. This is a lot more focused on what you can get done during the early stages of the game, but potentially this is a way that they are really looking at their opponents, right? Hey, we think we can out-team fight you no matter the sort of champions that we've got for ourselves, so we might as well index into the early game a little bit more heavily and see if we can't just win out in the early matchup, and then it makes the team fights easier regardless, and things like the Vi really help out on that, right? You can get so aggressive with this fight. You've got tons of setup for ganks in these lanes as well, and it is putting a lot of pressure right here on Beichuan to be able to actually get those ganks off. But if you can begin to get these lanes rolling, it's so tricky to play into this sort of composition. Braum is a great anti-engage tool. Ashe can do both going forwards and backwards, really does like playing backwards, and the Ahri is going to be able to follow up well. Like you said, it's not consistent damage, but if you manage to have a good early game, it is damage that can hit like an absolute truck.
ThunderTalk looking to lean into pick potential and disengage oriented in the top and support roles. Edward Gaming still searching for their first win of Split 1 2025 LPL. Onto the Rift, we are getting set to go here. It's important to mention, ThunderTalk in a lot of their series have yet to start off with the right foot forward, so Edward Gaming in a pretty good position, but I have to point it out once more. Even if these teams don't seem too keen on playing heavy for those feats of strength, for the Otacon as it comes, this game, most importantly, Bloxer, the early to mid-game phase could not be more important.
Absolutely not. And we've spoken a lot right here about ThunderTalk, the way that they like to play, the way that this composition is laid out. But I think this EDG composition is also fascinating. It has an okay time during the early laning phase, but really comes to light one to get those 2 to 3 items under your belt and could begin to just poke people out massively with both the Taliyah and the Varus. This is the sort of composition that makes it very tricky to actually try to step up into these objectives. And if they do... Oh, hang on. Assum's okay. Okay. Was slightly worried he was going to get pincered there, have to blow a summoner spell. Once you're trying to play around these big objectives, and like we've been saying, there are more of these big objectives in the current meta, this is the sort of composition that can really command a space and force you to take bad trades walking into you.
This is a pivotal game for Assum to not only get going once more. We saw the stats after his first series, bottom of the barrel for the LPL, but what you're talking about, Bloxer, especially now that we know it is going to be that lethal tempo on hit Varus. Assum is the clear-cut scaling factor across both teams by a far margin. So if this Vi Ahri isn't able to punish him well enough as the game goes on, if the Ashe arrows aren't landing onto this Varus, who does take the cleanse to check it, Assum is going to have all day to just fire auto after auto, arrow after arrow, and really just be the pivotal carry if this game goes late.
Absolutely. Hoya, right now, just going to have a pretty miserable time in this individual matchup right here, up against two opposites. And I really do like this play right here out of EDG to bring that bot lane up towards the top side, get yourself a free laning phase. We were talking about how it's very tricky for a melee support to play into Ashe Braum. Rakan is one of the few who can make it work because you are so mobile. You can dash out and away and keep things working like that. But just to move your bot lane away from this matchup, not even have it as a possibility, and get that free scaling for your Varus to get to those 1 to 2 items where you're really beginning to pop off is a great look so far. Obviously, it does completely concede the bot lane to over to 1xN and Feather. They're going to get free time as well to pick themselves up plates to get as much damage as they want to onto ZDZ, and it is going to force a little bit of support from Wink down into this bottom lane. It is absolutely fine to do this, and you get free extra XP onto Assum in the top lane for it. So overall, I like the way that EDG have played this one out. I need to see them push the advantage a little bit more, though, to make it fully worth it.
Who more to rely on for that than our two junglers? As we do see Beichuan going for pretty mirrored clear compared to Xiaohao. They both are going to likely just trade these scuttles and maybe look for ganks, but both their closest lanes are pretty in control of their teammates by this point. So stop me for this one before. The early game, at least for now, going to show us a ruinous Atacon once more if we keep up at this pace.
Absolutely. It's been such an interesting look where Ruinous has just been the way forwards for pro play, and I don't think I've seen a single Ruinous in a solo queue game, right? Everybody's just fighting. Yeah, exactly. Fighting, kills. Getting 15 kills in 14 minutes is not that tricky in solo queue, but it feels like a much higher barrier to entry in these pro play matchups, and it's fascinating because that voracious buff, I think, is much better for pro teams. They know how to play around the ability to get those free recalls so much easier. They know how to push their limits, and then being able to just step over it all of a sudden is such an interesting look. Obviously, if this game could turn around, we could end up with the bloodiest matchup in LPL history. You never know. But for right now, like you said, things are looking pretty chill. We are going to see both of these junglers head back to base pretty soon. Already got that reset coming out from Beichuan, heading up towards this top side of the map. If you can get a kill right here onto Assum, because Assum is stepping up quite far, that would very much help out Hoya, although it would be surprising. There's a lot of vision, it's good setup. Assum knows that he's safe for the minute.
That's the one clear advantage in the XP department, is that Assum is much further on pace compared to 1xN, even despite the fact he's down a little bit of CS. Off the first reset, ThunderTalk are going to try and match bottom lane for bottom lane, but I do see ZDZ channeling his own recall. Wonder if Edward Gaming would go for the counter swap. For now, they're going to send Assum back up top side. They do have Wink nearby, so it's not fully traditional, but we're going to land at least on traditional matchups for the early game pretty soon.
Just going to move themselves around a little bit in terms of the lanes, and I think this was a smart decision right here out of ThunderTalk. They needed to stop the potential bleeding of turret plates up in the top side, and you don't mind this matchup between your top lane. It shouldn't end up in solo kills. Obviously, we've seen Casantes pop off. You could pull solo kills out of nowhere randomly, but it's not quite as much as you would expect with more aggressive top laners, and so getting into these slightly more standard matchups is nice. Potentially also can help you out for trying to get onto these initial set of Void Grubs. Having your bot lane there, 2 extra champions, a little bit more damage as well, could be very, very handy.
Keep seeing another early game power spike for ThunderTalk, loving these hawk shots from 1xN. He spots out Xiaohao coming for his top side clear. Beichuan, it was on his bot side clear. I was curious if he was just going to maybe force that dragon, feel like he could take it solo, knowing Xiaohao wasn't going to be anywhere near, and the lanes were pretty neutral sets, but instead is looking to move up here and contest. We might have a first fight coming near these grubs, especially if this Braum passive stacks. Wink gonna land 1 auto short. Both junglers are present, looking for a fight. Vault Breaker being channeled here. Beichuan gonna go right in onto Xiaohao, gets the brittle stack stun. But both of these teams are just proxying each other, daring the other one to overstep here. And now it's finally ThunderTalk. Feel the advantage prevalent with SeTab here. That was a heal used by Wink just to protect Xiaohao, and it's ThunderTalk that will grab control of the top river.
Yeah, they've got all 5 members around. EDG, though, they can collapse 5, and their champions are not the weakest during the early game. It just depends on if you want to step up here.
Oh, good charm from SeTab. Is going to get the cleanse out of Assum, but he has to use his Spirit Rush to jump on out of here. And now all of EDG are here. ThunderTalk are trapped in the pit. There's a great Hoya ultimate on the Poppy to send one out, but it costs him all of his mana and nearly all of his health bar, as it's SeTab having to flash away from one of the little mites. And first blood goes over to Assum off a great pick from ZDZ. Nobody gets a Monster Slayer stack, and it's Edward Gaming that grabbed the first bounty towards Feats of Strength.
And that was a great little look right there for EDG. It's very early on in the game, but seeing them win a team fight fills me with hope for the outcome of this series. We'll have a look back at what ends up happening right here, and they just get surrounded. SeTab obviously manages to land a pretty nice charm, but it's immediately cleansed away, and he takes a ton of damage from this one. Plus, Void Grubs do a decent amount of damage, and the whole time this fight is going on, you're taking chunks from it into your backline. Hoya has to try to buy a little bit of extra space for the team, but ends up losing so much of his life, and in the end you just have to sacrifice away your support. Poor Feather is going to go down, but because you end up losing that member, you can't finish off the last grub. Like you said, you don't get yourself that extra stack, and that has got to feel rough right there for ThunderTalk. It's not going to be ruinous in terms of the game, but still not going to be the ideal initial set. And the fact that that first blood kill also goes over to Assum, that's exactly who you want to be getting that early gold on top of.
And EDG are just looking to kind of snowball that early power. Hawkshot is going to spot Xiaohao on this dragon, but they don't have lane prio in mid or bottom currently. Waves crashing into those turrets, so there can't really be a contest from ThunderTalk besides Feather watching the first Infernal Drake pass away. And EDG are now a bit closer to a pretty early feats of strength if they can continue dominating the monsters.
Well, you don't believe that we're going to get our Winter's Bite steal in that situation. Didn't think that that's why Feather was stepping up.
Listen. The guy's been on a heater with the Hook champions. I don't know if I trust the Braum Q steal, but it is the LPL. Anything can truly happen in a league like this.
Crazier things have happened, but no, exactly. It is going to be another one of these objectives going on over. EDG having themselves a very nice early game, but this hasn't been their issue. Right now, this initial fight, and even an initial team fight at 7 minutes into the game, that's not where they've been faltering. It's been the late game decision making and late game team fighting that has been their biggest weakness. That being said, if you can win this early game, it's a lot easier to win out on late game team fights that maybe you didn't set up for quite as well, or you haven't positioned quite as well if you're just stronger than your opponents. Right now, it's not even 500 gold, the gap between these two teams, and nobody's massively ahead in terms of getting themselves those stacks or anything. But still, it is a good start right here for EDG.
Ooh.
That's... wow. Getting the
Rule
flash
number 1
there is huge.
Rule number 1 of Ash arrow ults. You gotta flash to a side. You can't flash in the same direction as the arrow. Does not cost Assum too much, but that key summoner, like you called out there, blocks her. Feather and Beichuan looking for a fight, though. They get a great stun chain, and Wink is just gone in an instant. Good stun stack with the cease and desist. And Beichuan's able to get out with a kill traded. We're even in that count now between our two squads.
And going to be able to pick up that blue buff that was the initial catalyst for that fight. And this is the sort of aggressiveness that we really have been seeing from Beichuan. Has just constantly been happy to step up, playing things like the Viego, the Wukong, the Xin Zhao, all of these champions that love to get as aggressive as possible at all times. And into the Wukong, I think the Vi has a great matchup, because both the Wukong and the Vi are very reliant on getting their ultis to have the best ganks, but the Vi can do a little bit more during the early stages of the game, and just gets that little bit stronger earlier on. Of course, the Vi doesn't look so good once you get late into the game, and if you fall behind, can be very, very tricky to execute. But Beichuan's been playing it incredibly well, and has already got that first item completed. And the fact that you've got that Sundered Sky now is huge. Sundered Sky in the last couple of patches has just been so very strong for turning these champions who usually would have to be very careful with what engages they want to go to into semi-tanks with the amount of healing you can get in big skirmishes.
Beichuan looking to push the tempo with that legendary item done as the next set of Void Grubs spawn, and Beichuan's looking for virtually the same sort of fight. Forces the Trickster out of Xiaohao, and this is feeling like deja vu here, because ThunderTalk, they're starting the Grubs again, and they're on the ward once more. And they're going to get collapsed again. There's a Weaver's Wall available. Xiaohao does have the Cyclone. Cease and desist is still a couple seconds away. This is a real big gamble from ThunderTalk, and they are nowhere near done with these Grubs just yet. The second one's soon to fall. Here's the Weaver's Wall down, coming across for Angel. Going to trap some in. 1xN on the wrong side of the wall, but it felt a bit early as it does dissipate. Flash still has the arrow land. Flash Glacial Fissure's going to follow. They're trying to go hard in the paint for Angel, but they're not going to get there. Cease and desist flies through his face one. He's got Xiaohao in his sights, and he's going to find the first kill to set up the rest of the squad. In goes the all-out from ZDZ, trying to find these trade kills, but he can't get to Feather, and he doesn't have the same resistances. That Casante's not tanky enough, and ThunderTalk find the pick and make the kills happen for a big fight win.
That's the ThunderTalk that we've been waiting to see in this game. The just snap engages that they like to pull out is huge, and we both saw it during that fight. The Weaver's Wall out of Angel, it was early. It was way early. You were watching ZDZ walk all the way from bot lane up through the river to join at that grub fight, and had just about gotten into the mid lane at the point at which that Weaver's Wall came through. You can't engage without this Cassante. It's a mistiming, miscommunication between EDG, and once again, those cracks are starting to show in the way that this team is able to execute onto those team fights. It's now 1,000 gold in the advantage for ThunderTalk, and we can watch it right here. This was the mid lane play, actually. Wow,
yep.
Okay, this one right here, and it's just the snap engage.
Flash in place.
Feather splashing forward, SeTab heads on over the wall, is being incredibly aggressive with those spirit rushes, and Beichuan just heads straight into the backline as well. I think that ThunderTalk, the most impressive thing about this team is the way that once somebody says they're going in, there's no hesitation. This team is more than happy to blow every engage tool possible to just get into a fight, and they play with such a level of just togetherness that we don't see very often from teams, at least this early on in splits. They're having a great early game.
The one silver lining for EDG is that because Beichuan went so aggressive, he does end up trading his life, and neither team feels comfortable enough to grab that last Void Grub. It's a lonely Jerry or whatever name you like to give the grubs. Not going to be able to grab that, but instead, EDG are going to teleport Angel up here top lane to dive a Poppy. Not the easiest champion to dive. Let's see how this one executes as EDG is going to grab the turret aggro. Hoya gets stunned up by the Slipping Stone. Cyclone not going to find the knock up first. The second bout will onto Hoya, and luckily for them, Cassante is too darn tanky for one measly turret, and they're able to find the kill.
Looks like they are going to lose out onto that first turret blood, though. Just about. You can see the idea, right? Dive the Poppy top lane, try to kill her quick enough that you're able to then pick yourself up that first tower. Doesn't end up happening. You lose the Drake as well. That final Void Grub does go over to EDG. And it is going to be 2-4 in terms of grubs. A Drake apiece as well. And this early game has overall been very, very even. Like you said, it is tricky to dive a Poppy, but the Cassante just stood there. Doesn't care. The tower is tickling him. It really does not matter. And as these first items are completed, this is the point in the game at which I think EDG really need to start up in the tempo.
Kraken Slayer, Malignant's done for the two main carries of ThunderTalk, Blade of the Rune King, and a soon-to-be Seraphs for Angel and Assum. Gotta remember as well that we are now down to monster slaying to decide those feats of strength, those tier 2 to potential tier 3 boot upgrades. And each team is at one apiece despite all of the grub heroics. It's the dragons that are actually making the difference.
Yeah, the dragons are just going to have to be a little bit more of a focus. So far, it's sort of been the consolation prize for whoever isn't able to get the big play off in the top lane. That is going to have to change if you don't want to lose out on a massive advantage going forwards. We've obviously got the Herald spawning soon as well. And one could be pretty fun to play around. I'd be surprised if we don't see another 4v4, 5v5 situation. Both of these teams so far have been very happy to get involved, start to fight. ThunderTalk, with these first completed items, are in one of the strongest positions they're going to have in this game. The second item being completed is where this composition is really going to be able to pop off as strongly as possible. That's where I think EDG, they're just going to need to find a way to be a little bit more proactive, potentially get a pick before they need to teamfight, right? If you're having struggles with 5v5 teamfighting, starting it off with getting yourself a pick and turning it into a 4v5 is a great way to even the odds.
Beichuan was looking, saw Assum there in the mid lane alone, wanted to maybe go for that ult play, but the rest of EDG all show up across the line, 5 stacking this top river. They want this Rift Herald in their sights. So ThunderTalk are trying to pull them apart here. Hoya teleporting in. Stun gonna land on this ZDZ. He's not too tanky just yet. He's getting his health bar chunked, but he uses the all-out to pull Beichuan under his tier 1 turret, and now the fight has commenced. Feather gonna fall first. SeTab trying to go into the backline, but Angel and Assum stay safe, and they trade out Hoya, and CDC will not fall. Even a flash forward from what I said will not grant him the gray screen. What a hero play from Edward Gaming's top laner. They grabbed 3-4 kills for virtually nothing.
Yeah, they don't lose anything whatsoever. And I was watching ZDZ there step up, and I was like, what's he doing? What is he doing? But he baits everybody in, and the fact that you can pull Beichuan under your tower right there just completely breaks the teamfight lines that ThunderTalk were trying to draw for themselves. They need these clear front to back so that they can launch themselves in when they think the time is right. All of a sudden, that is completely broken. We'll have a look back at this one. You've managed to get to this objective early, so EDG, they've got a good setup for themselves. But ZDZ, he's just so confident right here, steps in, and the tower does just more than enough for Beichuan to pull everybody around. It's the backside of this fight, I think, that is potentially more interesting than watching ZDZ just beast mode on people, because there's just nothing that the main damage carries out of ThunderTalk could do. That's so nice out of Wink as well, to just be absorbing as much damage as possible. Honestly, an incredibly well executed team fight. Not something we've said particularly often in reference to EDG.
And Bloxer, the fear that we had from Graf for ThunderTalk already showing in that fight with the split damage. We talked about it. Ahri, Ashe, Vi, not too reliable in the damage department, certainly as the game goes forward. And when you split up that damage with Beichuan, being thrown into a turret, 1xN trying to help, and then SeTab going for his own hero play on one side, it's just not enough damage to even assuade Edward Gaming from any of these aggressive plays. They're going to have to get back to trying to play, stacking the Ashe arrow, cease and desist, the SeTab damage, because that's really what's going to work for them. And the time for that to really be effective is ticking minute by minute.
Absolutely, and I think that that's where the lane swap that we saw during the level 1 was so impactful, because it takes everybody out of position, and you can't use these individual lane matchups that were so strong out of this ThunderTalk draft actually to the great effect that you would have wanted. We are now going to see this Rift Herald into the mid lane, takes a decent chunk out of this mid lane turret, not going to be able to pick up the kill onto it though. We do have 4 members hanging around all together. Could potentially look for a play if you're able to land a bit of engage. There's an attempt to get the pushback onto Hoya, not going to end up happening, and the play does fizzle out just a little bit. Straight on over to the Drake though, and this would be EDG managing to complete those feats of strength.
SeTab committed to getting that top lane tier 1 first. Can't teleport in. 1xN thrown on the wrong side of the Weaver's Wall. He's got all of EDG in front of him, and they're going to pile on the CC. 2 Cyclone knockups is enough to get 1xN, and now the ball, all holds are off, and EDG are flying forward with grace. What a Weaver's Wall from Angel. Another setup for Edward Gaming that results in a victorious fight.
Gorgeous, gorgeous fight right there. You pick up a tier 1 mid lane and this dragon to boot. Brilliant, brilliant fighting right there out of EDG. And that was the Weaver's Wall that we were hoping for. That initial play that we saw up around those grubs wasn't the best use of the Weaver's Wall, but this is exactly what we needed. SeTab also going to get jumped right here. Does still have the ulti to be able to survive, but having to use that once again defensively. It hasn't felt like SeTab's really been able to use that one in an offensive position so far. ThunderTalk, they're our team fighting team, but they are getting out team fought right here. Weaver's Wall is just brilliant to get everybody corralled in together, and you can see it's that Wukong Cyclone into the backline onto multiple members. Beichuan is having to run away on the backside of the fight. This is an EDG that we haven't yet got to see.
They're doing such a marvelous job at creating so much dysfunction in this ThunderTalk engage. We have not seen, since that first real pick between Beichuan and SeTab, this Ahri Vi able to sync up together, and the Ashe on top of that. And I'm going to keep harping on it. This is what ThunderTalk are relying on to win them the game.
Yep.
And now they're sitting down 3,000 gold, do not have access to the feats of strength buff, and they're going to have a hard time playing for Otacon. ThunderTalk need to find a big pick now before this game spirals out of control.
Of course, on the other hand, ThunderTalk have put themselves, hang on.
Great clone. No Ashe arrow comes through. Beichuan hits the trickster. Wake's going to go back in. Does use the quickness into a beautiful seismic shove. Another awesome chain of abilities between Edward Gaming. Going to force Beichuan out. Teleport coming through here for Hoya. He's coming into all of EDG here. They're going to see if they can stun him up. Hoya's going to use steadfast presence to dash away. Beichuan goes back in, but his health bar is far too low. Keeper's Verse going to knock one out, but Hoya flies into the mincemeat that is Edward Gaming. They just turn it right on its head. SeTab can't find an angle in it until he's lost all of his teammates. And look at ZDZ run the backline by himself. What has gone into Edward Gaming? Ace at 21 minutes in game 1.
ThunderTalk are falling to pieces right in front of our eyes right now, and it feels like the luck just isn't on their side. Everybody surviving on slivers of HP, but beyond that, luck is one thing, decision making is another, something we've criticized EDG for so much throughout the early stages of this split, but right now it is absolutely ThunderTalk that are making bad calls. This is a good counter engage on what was an attempted Enchanted Crystal Arrow play onto the Wukong. Now they're running away, but it's the teleport in out of Hoya. It comes through at an okay time. You get a little bit collapsed upon, have to run away initially, but this fight should be over. I don't know why Beichuan goes back in right here. It was not going to work. Went back in on about 40% HP. Hoya decides, hey, I'll go in as well. And I love 1xN and Feather being like, well, I guess we're fighting now. It's something we've complimented ThunderTalk for before, that they're all willing to scrap and fight. When somebody pulls the trigger, everybody goes. But that just was a bad decision. Whoever made that call wasn't correct in that one, and it's costing them dearly right now. All of a sudden, the gold gap has ballooned to about 5,000. 1,000. That's a decent chunk at the moment. Beichuan looking for a little bit of a flank right here. Potentially wants to get a kill onto Assum.
Remember, though, they took Otacon, Voracious Otacon in the background there when we were during the replay, so even going for picks right now is only going to grant you, what, a maximum of 500 gold over 5 kills in quotation mark. So Voracious Otacon, you talked about Bloxer, have you seen these LPL teams utilize it really well? Specifically in this game, it just grants EDG the will to go wherever they want for this next 2 minutes, and that even means picking off SeTab before he can even commit an ounce of Spirit Rush dashes to safety.
I think wherever they want is going to be into the base of ThunderTalk right now. They've got themselves a push going through the mid lane and the top. Bot lane is not anywhere to be seen, but still, they can just step up, and it doesn't matter. You've got that free, quicker recall, if anything. If you do end up getting taken down, 5 members strong right now up towards the top side of the map.
Whoa,
oh, nice
and
engage.
In goes Xiaohao, feeling so confident, running in, Wink behind him. He's going to get big grand entrance knockup, but they have to be careful. They're going under Nexus turrets. 1xN able to turn and start free firing with that lethal tempo, but his tanks are dropping to the rest of the might of EDG. You called it, Bloxer. Edward Gaming are using Voracious Otacon to take not just an entrance to the base, but an inhibitor, and maybe even more here as they're really sticking around. They don't have the wave for the Nexus turrets, and Voracious Otacon might not last much longer. EDG trying to escape to get a safe reset, but Beichuan is on the hunt. Spotted out on a ward, though, by Assum, who will force him back. And that should be the gist of it. EDG reset with nearly a 9,000 gold lead in this one.
And this is the other side to the Vi pick, right? You get these great plays off early on. This champion is excellent on a gank. Once you get that level 6, pretty much guarantees you a kill, barring some massive flash plays that your opponent can pull out. But once you get later on into the game, if you don't get that next set of items, you feel so weak. Every single time we see Beichuan trying to get a little bit of an engage going, a flank, as soon as he's spotted out, gets chunked for most of his HP, and it's really shown by the items right here. We called out that he got that first initial item super early on, but has since stalled out massively, whereas Xiaohao has been able to pick up a couple more items, is in a much stronger spot, and with a champion that finds it a lot easier to teamfight. EDG, they drafted themselves a comp that worked well into what ThunderTalk usually like to do for themselves, and it so far has been working out to great effect.
And now they can just take the free buffs they can get across the rift here. Second Mountain Drake, sure. What can ThunderTalk really do to contest? Baron spawning? Sure, why not we get vision set up and start pushing these lanes in? We got supers in the top lane, the perfect position for a Baron take. ThunderTalk are going to have to start gambling. You can see Beichuan going for it, but the pings allude to the fact that he has once again been spotted out. Ooh. Has himself a 1v1 with Wink, but 1xN is getting dove by Angel and Xiaohao, able to flash away from the Wukong. Really expert kiting here from 1xN to try and turn this for ThunderTalk, but all they end up getting is a couple key ultimates out of the much stronger Edward Gaming.
And they're now going to have to just head back, try to get a little bit more health back. And like you said, with those super minions pouring in through the top side, they're going to have to be very careful. It's going to be the Baron started up right here for EDG. Now, they've thrown games in this position before.
Yeah, and they don't have any ultimates to really fight, and Beichuan knows it. Angel going to flash away with the Seraph Shield, should be safe for now. SeTab gets a big charm onto Assum, who has to use his cleanse, but he's still safe. The damage isn't enough there for ThunderTalk just yet until SeTab dashes mid-stasis to find the pick onto Assum, kites himself back out expertly, and here comes the lightning after the thunder. 1xN free firing on his ass, knocks down Xiaohao. Next is CDC, he sure is tanky, but can he 1v5? The health bars are low, but not low enough. ThunderTalk find an inch, make it a mile. 4 kills and a turn to Baron to break open game 1.
They are gonna lose themselves a Nexus turret for this potentially though. And low health bars on taking this Baron. Still though, we called it. EDG, they find these team fights so tricky to do, and once again around a massive objective in the late game, EDG, they stumble, and man oh man was it close. The wallet diff nearly came on through, but we have had such a quiet game from 1xN, despite all of the hype we were giving the man earlier on in the show. But in this one, he pops off, really pops up. SeTab too, getting into the backline, picking up that initial kill, really unlocks 1xN to then be able to kite through this one, and really just weaves through this fight so expertly. ZDZ nearly pulls it back though. This K'Sante, we were very judgmental of it being taken as that blue 1 pick when the Ashe was available over on the other side, but ZDZ is showing why this pickup is something that EDG are so willing to take early on, showing just mastery on the champion. Still though, between SeTab and 1xN, those two are able to carry that fight, and that's now going to be the Baron buff in the back pockets of ThunderTalk.
The big spoils from that win, though, could just be the sheer gold that they get. Now that gold lead, I mean, Blockster, we were staring at it. It was approaching 8,000, and now it's down to a measly 2,000 at 30 minutes. That is as marginal as it comes.
Losing a teamfight in that position is incredibly difficult to do. It's something, unfortunately, EDG have been well acquainted with in recent times, but massive props to ThunderTalk to be able to weather the storm. I think it's potentially also worth mentioning that, yes, they lost themselves one of their Nexus turrets, but that's no longer as big as a deal as it would have been in previous seasons. That'll come back in 3 minutes' time.
Gotta also pay attention to that Mountain Drake timer, as it will be soon to pop up here. Edward Gaming still have a ton of win cons to play for, and you can see ThunderTalk giving respect over to their opponents, not willing to try and push these Baron waves out to even threaten any lanes, really, by this point. They've got top lane kind of pushing in their favor. 1xN gets the mid wave off of the middle inhibitor turret, but they're not going to get any structures off of this purple buff.
No, they are taking it to stop EDG from being able to just walk on into their base and end this game. And it has just helps with getting that gold income as well. You finally get over the 2-item hump for Beichuan. You've got 3 items now completed on SeTab and 1xN. Both of these two are going to be the main carries we've got to be looking at. If Feather can get a good engage paired with Hoya and Beichuan, these two have got the damage to be able to pay it back. I think it's actually very interesting as well to see the item pathway the 1xN has gone towards. Wants to get that anti-healing down, doesn't want to be dealing with just the constant healing that you can get out of Assum and Xiaohao on this game.
It's going to once again, though, nerf that damage profile, as 1xN really needs that Infinity Edge, as we have a Chains of Corruption Cyclone Mastery, throws both Beichuan and Feather up in the air under an enemy turret. There's nothing they could do but fall to the gray screen. SeTab, 1xN, and Hoya now have to run for the hills and make sure they get themselves out, because it could cost them the game, but at the very least should get Edward Gaming Mountain Soul for the rest of this one.
Yeah, Mountain Soul is going to be huge as well. It's already so tricky to kill ZDZ on this K'Sante, and it was just an overstep out of ThunderTalk. There was no reason that they needed to step up that far into this composition. That is the joys of a composition with a Rakan and a Wukong. You compare that engage so nicely. You've also got that Varus ulti as well, of course, to be able to kick things off. And I don't know why ThunderTalk decided to step up so far. You want to get some use out of this Baron, but just getting caught right there on the very edge with the ulti. And the quick response out of EDG, they pull the trigger immediately, pick themselves up those 2 quick kills. And that's all she wrote when it comes to the Soul Dragons. Aren't something we're focusing on quite as much at the moment, but that is going to be a big buff for EDG.
Beichuan, very aggressive Halt Breaker. Assum's damage is so high. SeTab going to commit the flash here. They find Angel in the thickets, and Hoya's on a massive flank here. Has the Keeper's Verdict if he could use it to give them even more of a man advantage, but Hoya's health bar is fastly depleting. Has to flash himself out, and SeTab gets caught by Wink. An awesome charm. Taste your own medicine for the Ahri. Beichuan goes in with the cease and desist, though. It's on to Assum. Once again, ThunderTalk are finding the picks onto the damage dealers, but they're losing their own as Xiaohao flies in the background with the Cyclone. His health his sustain is far too much to bear, and where's the damage through for ThunderTalk? It's Beichuan and Hoya. Time and time again, ThunderTalk fight their way out of misery for an ace once more in the face of EDG.
ThunderTalk, they refuse to die in this one. Every time they lose out onto a couple of kills, they find a way back into this game. And this one is the bloody mess that I had been hoping for. picking themselves up another ace, and another ace that they can't really do anything with. Looking back in onto this one, the fact that the Enchanted Crystal Arrow goes wide to start this one off is insane, but this, the move forwards out of SeTab, just annihilating onto Angel, and that's not a carry you want to have die right at the very start. But then from the follow-up, you can see Wink. I love these engages. That move forwards into the grand entrance is just gorgeous, managing to pick up another couple of kills, but you can't disengage from this composition. There's a Braum, there's an Ashe, there's a Vi. Trying to run away is almost impossible, so you're forced as EDG to keep fighting into this one, and eventually they just lose out onto the sustain damage, but it takes everything that ThunderTalk have to be able to pick this one up.
It's just such micro missteps from EDG that are costing them. Angel, a little bit out of position, shows his head behind his front line for half a second, SeTab commits. Assum, one click too far forward, got him hit by the Vault Breaker before the cease and desist comes through. And it's so easy for Assum and Angel to cook behind this comp, but these small missteps are just too much to bear to the way ThunderTalk has been playing. I think they have the gold turned off for this team, the way they fight, no matter how much the odds are stacked against them.
Absolutely, and it feels like, unfortunately, the EDG folder of fights they initiate and then lose just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We'll see if this is going to continue on throughout the rest of the game. Like you said, ThunderTalk, they just seem to be able to fight differently. I'm very excited for the matchup between them and BLG, but obviously there's still a lot of League of Legends left to play in this series, and I still don't know who I think is going to win this game. I worry that EDG are a little bit cursed. Every time they get themselves in a good position to a team fight, just seems to go wrong for them. Still though, they've got a push in the top lane, they've got a wave in a decent spot in the bot lane as well, and with some control over the mid wave, they can set themselves up a great amount of vision around this Baron. That's everything that they need to at least put themselves in a good position for this upcoming team fight. ThunderTalk, they're going to be once again trying to walk in blind, but they've got to contest this Baron. You can't give over a second one right here. It would most likely spell the end of the game.
It's important to remember as we gear up for potentially a final game winning or game saving fight, the EDG do have that ease of execution. Simple. If you could stack these knockups, these ultimates between Wink, Xiaohao, Angel, the seismic shoves, Assum is 4 items deep on this on-hit Varus, has more than enough damage to bring these front-to-back fights home. It is on ThunderTalk to continue to find flank angles, engages onto these carries. So EDG still in a pretty comfortable spot as they continue to scale behind a Mountain Soul, and by God, whatever the health bar is on ZDZ right now.
ZDZ is just so strong at the moment. Stepping forwards, potentially looking for that initial engage. You've got to pick your moments so carefully for both of these teams. Your engage tools are strong but squishy. If you choose the wrong moment as Wink to go jumping in, you just die. Exactly the same thing for Beichuan. And despite all of this initial setup, you can spot it out so easily with those hawk shots. ThunderTalk, what can they do?
Arrow gonna land on his ZDZ, buffers it perfectly with the W. Believe he actually got saved by Wink there, so no stun comes across. One key ultimate is down. Xiaohao, not the healthiest, but looking for a way in here. He's gonna go on to Beichuan. Does have to quit the flash, but gets knocked up by the Cyclone. The Weaver's Wall keeps him in turret range. Beichuan is sectioned off from his team and cut down. EDG now with no jungler on the enemy team should have a free shot at Baron. There's nothing ThunderTalk can do.
No, it's just a mistake right here. You could see fully charged up Vault Breaker on Beichuan. Could have stepped away, could have tried to get over that wall, but just decided to stick around for a little bit longer, wanted to go in, wanted to get that fight off with the rest of the team, but unfortunately isn't able to do so. In EDG, they survive themselves another potentially scary situation. They do it by avoiding a team fight, getting an initial pick, exactly what we were calling for this team to do earlier on. Once again, it really does feel like it's on ZDZ, constantly stepping up, an Angel with a great Weaver's Wall. The first one wasn't ideal, and everything since has been great. SeTab on a little bit of a wild adventure right here. Might be able to get this flank off. He's not going to be spotted out.
Beichuan is still mere seconds away from spawning. There's the Keeper's Verdict, sends Angel away. So it's a 3v4, now going to be a 5v3. SeTab is committed to this flank. His old Greybeard Elder spawns onto the Rift. Beichuan is back up. making his way back down, but EDG have taken complete control of this bottom river, and SeTab is still so committed. When will he step out? Steps out at just the inopportune time. Xiaohao has the flank spotted, and that means they have the green light to go back in on the front side of the fight. Hoya has to burn that flash. ThunderTalk now have control of the other, trying to burn it down. What a timed blast code from SeTab, gets away from Xiaohao. In goes Beichuan, they're going out for Assum, but there's no damage behind him. ZDZ trying to hold ThunderTalk at the front line. Beichuan gonna go down, flashing forward is Angel. Next is Hoya. EDG found the fight they needed. Front to back is the way to go, and that should bring them to not only kills, not only aces, but a Game 1 win to find their first win of the LPL split.
EDG, massive performance right here, exactly when it counted, back and forth game, but they're going to pick themselves up that clean ace, and ZDZ, he shows up in a massive way for the team, both in that 1v1 on the Jace and now on this K'Sante, completely unkillable. Every bit of damage that ThunderTalk had during that fight was poured into that K'Sante. He didn't care, more than happy to absorb all of that as the carries die on the backline. EDG, oh, it looked like it was going to be a bit risky, but this game has restored so much faith in the way that this team plays.
What is going on with this Nexus turret? Okay, all right, so I didn't see a health bar. They weren't able to hit the Nexus, but they got there, and there it is. Like you called out, Bloxer, what a response from Edward Gaming after the BLG series. They find their first win, maybe one of the most important series of their season so far.
And I think we've got to put a lot on the draft, right? We called it out immediately. ThunderTalk, you're our teamfighting team. We love watching you teamfight. This isn't really a teamfight composition. They ran out of damage multiple times. If they weren't able to get that initial into the backline set of kills, ZDZ stood there on K'Sante menacingly. And that was about all he really had to do, because there was just not enough damage and not enough backline access, not enough mobility on this composition to really do anything about it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm a fan for getting Ash on red side, right? Like,
yeah,
that is awesome. You're not going to see that happen in the LPL a lot. Does that mean that you need to index so heavily into this pick comp? I think we learned the hard way, no. I think ThunderTalk have learned that they need to stick to what works best for them, and we'll see if they can make that adjustment. But EDG, it's one thing to, get the draft gap. It got shaky, but we talked about it. Even when things were looking dire for them, the easy execution of a comp like that, it's just kind of snap of the fingers, front to back. Not much trickery to it.
No, it really wasn't. It was flashy in moments, but overall, like you said, front to back, you've got ZDZ stood there on the behemoth of a K'Sante, and everybody else was doing their job pretty much perfectly. I think I'd also like to say a massive well done to Xiaohao on that game, because I thought that Wukong was really nice, especially when paired up with Wink. The engage that you get between the Cyclone and that Grand Entrance is just gorgeous. Chef's kiss towards that one, and they were playing that pairing incredibly well to pick up those initial fights, and they were also finding themselves okay situations off the back of teamfight losses. Now, obviously, you don't want to lose the teamfights initially, but if you're EDG, potentially you know that's going to happen at some point, and it was the fact that they bounce back every single time. If they can clean up those teamfights just a little bit, the bones of this team, the basis of what they've built for themselves, looks like it's really promising.
It is important to remember that game was at 27, 28 minutes. EDG had a top lane inhibitor down. They had a 7.5k gold lead that they nearly did throw away. But the pivotal point that you made there, Bloxer, was they got over their team fighting woes, at least for this game, as we get a look at those post-game stats.
What a roller coaster, right? That 25-minute mark is what you're describing, right? They were on top of the mountain, having a great time. Yeah, but hey, it's a fun roller coaster that takes you back up again because they're able to weather the storm, and potentially this is what EDG wasn't able to show us up against BLG. BLG, being BLG, are just so good at closing out those games. You give them an inch, they will take the entire Rift, and they did all 3 games in that series. ThunderTalk, potentially not quite up to that standard, and although they fought back very admirably, were able to get themselves back into this game, wasn't as good. The thing is, are ThunderTalk gonna draft differently and not put themselves in the hole in the first place? Because in this game, if they'd have been going into this team fight, that initial team fight where they get the ace and EDG's top of the mountain comes crashing down, they were down 8,000 gold. If you're not down 8,000 gold in that team fight, it is nowhere near as close, and all of a sudden this is a very different game. So I'd really like going forwards to see ThunderTalk index more into having an early game composition that team fights well.
We'll have to see if that is the correct medicine that Dr. Bloxer did in fact order. But my friend, as you are stepping on to our awesome stage here at the unofficial English LPL broadcast, it's time for you to put your money where your mouth is with the MVP talk, because I think this one is a tough one. You think you're confident you're going to match up with the LPL voters? I'm curious if you might have a different thought than what you think the LPL voters would go for player of the game.
I think I'm going to probably go a different way. I think Wink was the best player in this game. I think
I like it.
A ton of those big team fights that they did win, again, EDG winning a team fight is not a sentence I thought I was going to be saying today, came off the back of Wink getting brilliant engages, buying a ton of space for his team.
We'll have to see. I'm going to say that the LPL voters are going to give it to the K'Sante player.
Yes.
Which,
I mean, it had 17,000 health and just stood there, and also dealt a million damage too. Like, it's very... And I'm not saying ZDZ didn't have a good game. He had a damn fine game. But it's just something about seeing a Rakan played into this kind of composition, which can be quite tricky for a Rakan. You've got a Poppy on the other side. That is often enough to just stop a Rakan dead in its tracks. We didn't end up seeing that happening. I think that's why Wink would be my player of the game right here.
we'll have to find out. I'm excited when we get that reveal. For all you patch, I guess I really want to call it Season 15, patch 15.1, but we're on that weird new format. Patch Season S1 25.1. All you haters of that patch. We did see the Feats of Strength team and the Ruinous Otacon buff wearers win this one, so I guess you get a point for the Reddit and X haters out there of the patch.
True, true. It's not like EDG made those buffs look strong, though. They feel like they were, whilst necessary to the outcome of this game, only at that moment where they were pushing into the base and using the fact they had that free Guardian Angel to great effect, did it really feel like that was the deciding factor between these two teams. Other than that, I mean, the way that ThunderTalk just didn't really seem to want to fight for those feats of strength at all, didn't particularly care about going towards Atakan either, was perfectly happy to just say, hey, we're gonna be able to out-team fight you.
You know what I'm noticing here, Bloxer? We may not be as drippy as our two awesome LPL casters, but at least we've all got some sort of chain going on here. We all got some chains going, so at least we can match somewhat up to this drip. I'm telling you right now, I've got nothing in my closet that matches that drip. Let's see how drippy our MVP looks, though. Does Mr. Bloxer nail his first pick on our broadcast? No! It's going to be the K'Sante player. Yeah. ZDZ takes it home. Shock and awe.
Dealing 16% of your team's damage with that build is disgusting. K'Sante is certainly a champion of all time, but I think ZDZ is very deserved in this one for two things, right? Winning this game with the K'Sante and playing it so well, but also winning that 1v1 that gave them the side selection, that gave them blue side, that allowed them to first pick the K'Sante. It was all planned out, all on the shoulders of ZDZ, and I mean, looking at this highlight package, man is playing on the edge the entire time. In the last team fight, he's so tanky, he barely takes any damage despite being the main focus of everybody on ThunderTalk. But throughout the rest of the game, there were so many deaths that he just about avoids and baits so many members of ThunderTalk in that it leaves them out of position and easily killed by the rest of his team.
I think that if we're giving MVP based off of the flashiest play of a game, that last fight where he lost 75% of his K'Sante's health bar, still able to hit the Natovo strikes mid-W into a wall with that ultimate. That, you know, K'Sante may be kind of straightforward for a lot of people when they watch, but the nuances this champion brings is another reason why he's so potent in pro play ever since he got released, and ZDZ really showed off those chops. But ThunderTalk fans, fear not, because if we are leaning on what we've historically seen, it's a small sample size, ThunderTalk are really good at dropping game ones and then turning dominant. They did it to LNG twice in a row. So, in a way, ThunderTalk are in familiar territory. in this
Very
matchup.
comfortable, very comfortable. And hey, they physically cannot draft themselves the same composition. So we don't have to worry about having to see this pick-style composition out of ThunderTalk again. And I think that is a good thing overall if you are hopeful for ThunderTalk's chances in this one. The way that they play, it just didn't feel like it suited the pick composition, and they still nearly made it work. It's not like ThunderTalk got leveled in this game. It was incredibly back and forth. Again, I can't help but keep thinking back to those teamfights they won down hundreds and thousands of gold. If they're a little bit closer in gold, I think that we end up seeing this one as a ThunderTalk victory. Obviously, ifs, ands, or buts, it didn't go that way. They need to go back to the drawing board, but it was still an incredibly impressive game out of both teams. I'm just very excited to see an EDG victory on the board at all. It's obviously great to see teams pick up that first win of the split, but I do not think we've only got 2 more games left of this one.
Bloxer, I'm a fan of Ash, but I'm a bigger fan of 1xN Hyper Carry Champions.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
hope ThunderTalk get back to that as we are soon to get to a short break. But before we get there, it is important to mention that it is, well, I'm going to put it pretty bluntly here for all you guys at home. It is early in the morning for Mr. Bloxer over there. It is 2 a.m. for me, middle of the night basically. So sometimes it's hard for us to stay high energy for broadcast. Luckily, thanks to the support from coffee subscribers, fans have donated 67 coffees to keep us wired and ready. Since this is a fan-run broadcast, we rely on subscribers from Coffee, YouTube, and Twitch to support the stream. If you subscribe, you could also unlock perks like early access to content and access to exclusive channels on Discord. Make sure to join up now. We appreciate all the love and support, whether you're on YouTube, Coffee, or Twitch, so make sure to check all those out. I'll give you some time to do it because we're heading to our first intermission break. On the other side, ThunderTalk side selection as they look to try and even up our Series 1 apiece. We'll